I'm Dina Nagib, Principal Consultant of Grass Goddess Consulting and California Correspondent for the weekly news show, Cannabis Coast to Coast News. This is a special one-on-one interview, and I'm so happy to welcome Jackie Bryant, who is a friend of mine and also an amazing cannabis journalist who you probably know. She wrote the article in the New York Times on Thanksgiving a couple years ago. She's also here living in San Diego, a Southern California resident. She was the former managing editor of San Diego Magazine and now is a content strategist for them. She's on numerous podcasts, including Puff Puff Press. And she has her newsletter, Cannabitch, which I'm a big fan of. I've been reading it for a number of years. And I'd love to start off, just talking about your last article that you sent out, Jackie. Well, first of all, welcome to the show. How's it going?
Thank you. I want to make a couple of notes. I'm also a former and hopefully future and sometimes pro cannabis media commentator. I have been in the past, not for a couple of years now, but it's really good to be back. And I believe you also are a Cannabitch contributor, Dina. Don't forget that. So it's really good to be here. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I am so honored that you sometimes run some of the stuff that I write. So I appreciate that. So yeah, I really appreciated it over the weekend. We have all of these fires that are going on just north of us up in the Los Angeles area. And I really appreciated what you sent out, in your Cannabitch newsletter. Do you want to talk a little bit about it, what you wrote and why?
Yeah, so my day job, I work at San Diego Magazine, and we mobilized at the magazine pretty quickly to get a list of resources for people either in the LA fires who need immediate on the ground help, or people in San Diego who want to help, seeing as, we're just a couple of 100 miles down the road. We consider ourselves, we're one mega region, we're neighbors, they're in our backyard, et cetera, et cetera. We also face exactly the same climate and fire threats that they do. So it hits close to home. We're not immune to these threats either, and we know that. So we mobilized at the magazine, and I always give the magazine its space to do its own work. I don't want to step on anyone's toes, but by the end of the week, after we had realized the full scale of these fires and how many hundreds of thousands of people had been displaced and were still under, I think it was like 180,000 people were still under evacuation orders by Saturday morning. I just woke up Saturday morning and realized that among the cannabis industry, I hadn't really seen too much communication. And I hadn't seen too much media going out about resources and where to help other than posts on social media, which are, of course, helpful, but it's hard to vet that. And I even noticed, people in the cannabis industry who had lost their homes posting information about FEMA and applying for FEMA assistance and saying that they hadn't known anything. And then it just kind of clicked for me. I realized that most like so much of the cannabis industry is in LA right now. They're impacted, and cannabis media people as well. They're not going to be compiling resources and sending them out. And since I'm in the area, it feels close to home, and I have the ability. I realize like no one's waiting to hear from the weed lady on a list of resources, but just in case they are, maybe this is the one email they get that's delivering stuff to them. So I just whipped it up and I got a press release from FEMA since I am a member of the press about how to make a claim and to do that immediately. And, I copied that in there. And if, the cannabis community also isn't always a community that taps into mainstream media. And so they may not be getting some of these communications directly. And I figured, what, why not? So let's send it out. And at the very least, people will know that they have this information in their inbox if they need to search for it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that that's really helpful and just, yeah, there in case they need it. So you mentioned FEMA as one of the big resources. Were there other resources that you included that you'd like to mention to people?
Yeah, cannabis specific. There is Best Friends House, which is an accessories website, and they have all banded together to collect monetary and physical donations. And they partnered with LA area stores. They've opened up their storefront, and they're coordinating donations, and they're also coordinating shipping from around the country because they have access to really good shipping rates. So they've encouraged people to get in touch with them. Shop Bestie's House on Instagram, via social media, via Instagram. That was one that's very close to home, obviously for the cannabis industry. And then I know Embark has set up a fund that everything goes towards Jose Andres's what is it, the World something Kitchen. I'm trying to remember the exact name. It's the Jose Andre something with World in a Kitchen. That obviously gives warm meals to people in immediate crisis. So those were two that I wanted to point out. And also you're able to directly donate to the fire department in LA and the fund that supports it. You're able to donate to school districts directly, to food banks directly, Feeding San Diego, Feeding Los Angeles, Feeding America. They're all partnered up. Those were some. And then also I linked to mutual aid resources. A mutual aid is it's not charity, it's a giving universe structure that comes out of anarchist and socialist theory. And there are many mutual aid organizations on the ground in LA that are doing the work that governments can't, that they are not fast enough and nimble enough to do, and not in the communities enough. So I gave a list of those resources of LA mutual aid groups that are on the ground and doing the work and do the work even in times of no crisis, and also a link to resources for Black families in Altadena, which is has a large historical Black population, and a lot of those families are facing severe, crisis immediately. A lot of those neighborhoods were wiped out. So those are definitely some resources I wanted to, just and also San Diego Magazine, we've got a list too. So if you're outside of Los Angeles, but you still want to help, and maybe you're in the wider California area, there are some larger state and regional resources that are tapping into LA. So if you're in San Diego, check out San Diego Magazine's resources. If you're elsewhere in California, I'm sure that your local media company has a similar list too.
Awesome. That's really fascinating, the diverse resources that you came up with. I really didn't know about a lot of that. So,
Yeah. Well, no, that it's good to hear because sometimes it seems a little obvious to me, but I realize I have access to all these informations. I'm getting press releases, people are sending it to me, and it seems obvious to me because that's just the natural flow of information I'm in these days. But I'm like, it did just click for me. I was like, oh, I'm getting all of this, but like the point is that I'm getting it and I'm supposed to be sending it to people. So I'm glad to hear that it's useful.
as a friend of yours, I'm getting to know this about you, Jackie, that you have access to all this information out there.
I do. That is as a journalist, that's your currency. So I try to stay informed and obviously pay it forward when it makes sense.
I love that. Well, speaking of which, there's something that we were talking a little bit about, this new material hempcrete that is being used. And so I think it would be really interesting to understand. My understanding is that it's flame retardant. So if you think that this is something that could be a path forward to some of the reconstruction efforts that now need to happen in the LA area.
Yeah, so hempcrete is having a little bit of a moment. It's not new per se, but I would say it's new in the sense that it's being taken more seriously on a wide commercial scale. So it is fire retardant, it's carbon negative, it's mold resistant, it's insulative. It's obviously very eco-friendly. We know all the benefits of growing hemp. I don't think I have to explain that to this crowd, but yeah, if you pop around the internet and if you're tapped into the cannabis community or the architecture and design or maybe the fire community or what have you, you'll notice that the hemp industry is definitely trying to make itself known during this time. Like, hey, we're here, we're available. We have this amazing material that is all of the aforementioned superlatives, and we would like to help rebuild Los Angeles with this. I mean, can you imagine if they rebuilt LA with weed? That's kind of iconic. But yeah, the U.S. Hemp Building Association, has posted in support of helping to rebuild the fires and in solidarity. It's they're California based, and so or at least part of their organization is California based, and they say we understand this of course, and we're available to help. The National Hemp Association also put out a press release 2 days ago outlining how hemp could help create more fire-safe securities. And, it goes into how hemp as a plant in general is just fire resistant. And then it goes into hempcrete and then different kinds of hemp made industrial materials and how it can help, your home reach International Code Council, the ICC, that helps designate standards for fire safe structures. So yeah, it's hempcrete. I don't know it's going to happen. It would be cool if there was some way to officialize this, but the industry is definitely making itself known in this time. And I, I mean, listen, the saying is anything you can do with plastic, you can do with hemp, and it's true, and then some. So I'm always in support of hemp having its good day, especially in industrial materials, because you know, climate change, et cetera. It's time we have to look at these things a little bit differently and figure out a different way to build and live if we are to continue.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's interesting, but you can't consume plastic. So that's something that
Right?
has.
It's true. No, exactly. It's significant. I mean, it's obviously significantly more eco-friendly in just about every sense. Also, water-wise plants, you name it. So we'll see.
Yeah.
Would be
All
cool if
right.
it happens. But yeah, everybody keep an eye out. If you're in the hemp industry and you know that this could become a thing or there's a pathway, it'd be very interesting to keep up on that progress and see if it actually becomes something meaningful.
I love it. Well, thank you for sharing all of that with us. Hempcrete. You heard
Hempcrete, baby.
it.
Could be the
Awesome.
future.
All right, let's take a little bit of a turn. So, I heard that you became a mother fairly recently. And so, just wanted to talk a little bit about that, how being a mother has sort of changed your outlook on life. Anything, that you'd like to share on that personal front?
Yeah, I have a 21-month-old son. He'll be 2 in May. And yeah, I mean, it changes your life in all ways. I think anybody who's a parent can understand that. Anybody who's a mother, probably additionally so. There's some extra things mom does in the process that dad doesn't get to do in childbirth that, changes things forever. I mean, for me, I don't know that it changed my outlook on life. I think I'm 39 years old now, so I think if you have children young, it's not that it doesn't rock your world, it's that it just I don't know if it changes your outlook on life so much as it just focuses it. I don't really have a lot of time to do things that I don't want to do or that aren't making me money, and that's basically just the truth of it. And so my time is limited, my attention's limited. I have to be pretty focused on what I want to do personally and professionally, and that's a juggling act. So I'd say that's really the most monumental change of it. Me as a person, um, no, it hasn't changed my outlook on life. If anything, it just provides more clarity in when you parent or caregive, you become, in any sense, I think you become acutely aware of sort of the fragility of life and people and the things that tie us. And so I think if you live without that constant reminder, it can be easy to not see not see everything as interconnected. So I think if anything, it just kind of it keeps you human. It keeps you engaged on a personal level. So I don't really know what that has to do with weed, but uh, I would say if anything that's kind of how motherhood is focusing, and it's focusing and clarifying.
I love that. Focus, clarity, sounds grounding. Well, I met your little kiddo recently and he is just stinging adorable. So, yeah.
Things.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing all of that. Yeah, so I think sort of staying along the lines of women, there's been a little bit of a trend that we've started to notice recently of women returning to the cannabis industry. Like there's a little bit of a decline, it seemed, women working in the space, and it's sort of picking up a little bit. Do you have any thoughts on why that might be?
Yeah, that was a headline in late 2023. That was like all anyone could talk about, and this and that. And I can't say that I know concretely, but from what I've observed, I feel like as the industry matures and thins out in some sectors and beefs up in others, and as it professionalizes, I think that just inherently opens the space for women, especially because a lot of traditionally it was more men, and then it came up that way. And I just think that as things change, I think as some of the old school folks are probably, leaving the business over time, maybe things haven't ended up, the way they hoped or wanted. There's been several rounds of businesses coming and going already. So I think it's just sort of the natural flow of things. And as stigma lessens, it becomes easier to be a professional woman in the space. Like I'll go back to motherhood. I am obviously public and I am a mother, and it is something I think about in the back of my head sometimes, especially San Diego's not like the most liberal place all the time, but the real truth is that I could not have done this 10 years ago or 15 years ago. I mean, in California, sure, but certainly not in other places. And even then, it's just not what it used to be. And so I think just as the years go on, it just becomes normal. It becomes more professional, and it just becomes, there are more arenas for women to enter it who, if you're not like a heady girl who used to be a trimmer, for example, there are just more avenues for different women who come from different backgrounds. And so I think that just opens it for everybody, if that makes sense. Whereas like many of the jobs in the first line of the cannabis industry were like when it was mostly cultivation, and you know what I mean? As like marketing and PR and media and women and jobs that do tend to be staffed more by women increase. I think all of these factors combine kind of just to ensure that there are more women in the space. I also think maybe the wellness and pharma aspect could very much have something to do with it. And I think as the East Coast comes online, again, like cannabis culture is a little bit fresher out there. There's not like the old school history and cliques, and there aren't like weed famous people out there like there are out here necessarily. Like there are, it's just different though. All of which is to say it's a little bit more democratized, and I think it's easier to break in. And so in this area where like women do work and are out in the world, I think that it just makes sense in a newer sphere that you'll see more women, like
Oh,
right off the bat.
that's fascinating. There are so many things there that I want to talk
I
to
don't
you
know if the
more.
data I don't know if data bears this out, but anecdotally, like if I had to guess, like I would definitely credit the continued professionalization of the industry and also opening markets, especially markets that maybe don't have, as built up of a cannabis culture or legacy culture as California does.
Yeah, absolutely. And I see that. Spend time on the East Coast in those markets and like I definitely see exactly what you're talking about. So, yeah, that's really interesting. And I feel like we could have a whole nother conversation just on that topic
Yeah.
um,
100%. Yeah,
I
to
would
say
really enjoy digging into. But I do want to take another turn. And we have a big change that's coming up in the United States next week. We are going to have a new president coming. Well, it's not new president because
I
he's
guess not, right? Yeah.
but yeah, I just wonder if you want to comment that in the Republican Party that is controlling.
Yeah. I think anybody who says they know what's going to happen is totally full of it. Um, Especially because I don't even think people who are super tapped in on like these politics are so fickle nowadays, and even the Republican Party, like it's just not the same old crowd and script that it used to be. There's a lot of new faces in the last 10 years. It's not the old boys club that it used to be. It's a different boys club now. And I think we have no idea where this will go. I think some of it will depend on cannabis's utility as a culture war tool for Trump and his and for people who are politically aligned with him. I think if it seemed because you can see people testing it like the reefer madness thing is coming up in certain places, and there are people in his sphere who talk about it. He's kind of made comments, but he's also made like very like blasé comments about it. I don't believe anything he says usually, but you can tell from around him how they're kind of testing the waters to see if it's useful or not. Like, are people going to get outraged? Is this something we can stoke something over? And so I think it's weird because you have the political spectrum showing, that weed is universally accepted across the aisle, no matter, what where on the political spectrum you fall. And it's interesting because the politicians are still using it as this tool, whereas the electorate has already largely forgotten about it and gotten over it and overwhelmingly supports it. So it's a vintage concern, but it is obviously a very real one. And obviously the whole thing with the DEA hearings getting stalled is a whole mess. I think that that's evidence of this culture war wrangling that is actually happening. So I don't Republicans, the truth is they have not been friendly to weed. They have tried to use it positively to their advantage. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But if you actually go through and politically you examine it, you examine voting records, et cetera, and politicking, it's just clear they have not been friendly to weed. But it just is what it is. Sorry, everyone who doesn't agree with me, but you're wrong. Um, that being said, that's the old Republican Party. The party has changed. And I think that this party, this iteration, will do whatever it is that is politically expedient and useful. Cannabis could be useful. Cannabis also, to my earlier point, is accepted. It may not be useful. It may not be something that moves the needle for anybody anymore because people have kind of, like in popular consciousness, gotten over it. So if it's not useful to them, they could throw it away too. You know what I'm saying? Like if it's useful to them, they may use it and it could be good for us. I fully believe that they would do that if they could show that it would benefit the Republican Party in this administration. I also believe that if they thought it could help them to speak negatively about cannabis, that they would do that. And I also think that if they just ignore it completely because it's not going to either hurt or help too much, I also could see that happening. So basically, I think it just depends on how politically useful it can be is which way it will go. But
Yeah.
it's funny. I think people are saying it could be even worse. There are some people who are saying it could be better. I actually am probably more on the optimistic end. And I got to be honest, I think that there is more opportunity, again, not because they are more earnest or better or nicer or they like cannabis more, but just because there is more political opportunity for the Republicans to do something about it. I never believed the Democrats would, to be perfectly honest with you. And I always thought that they were lying to our faces, and I still do. So, it's not because I think one is better than the other, but I actually think maybe we have some unknown path forward that they could surprise us with. That's as far as I'm willing to go with that.
Fair. I
I could
appreciate
see it
your
working in some, I could see them pulling something out of a hat and if it's useful, but I don't know if weed is politically useful to anyone anymore. I got to be honest. Like people say, oh, it gets people to the ballot boxes. It kind of doesn't actually anymore. Actually, it does sometimes. So that's not really what it used to be. It remains to be seen.
Yeah. Definitely. All right. Well, I think we're pushing up on time right now, but I do want to just make one more comment about your Cannabitch newsletter that you sent out yesterday with a letter from Daniel Music, who I know you are very close to, you talk to all the time, and he should be out of federal prison this summer. But I know there's a lot to it. If you just want to maybe comment on
Yeah.
a little
Uh,
bit.
Dan is someone who I've written about before, and we correspond. He's been in prison for the last 5 years. He's due to be out this summer. He is on purely trafficking charges for a cannabis dispensary that he was running, obviously unlicensed in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. That he did shut down and ceased operations, and then after the fact, somebody snitched on him while he was working as an attorney. So it's I think it's a shitty story. There are a lot of people out there who said he deserves what he gets because he was breaking the rules. I totally disagree with that because if you understand his charges and the structure of his case, it's very clear that he's just doing what everyone else is doing legally now and making money off of and not rotting in prison for. So I publish insights from him from time to time. Was a licensed attorney. He went to Temple University. He's a very smart guy, and I asked him to talk about pardons. We've been talking about pardons because 'tis the season. It's the change of a new administration, and that always brings, a number of pardons. I'll try to keep it short, but I reported on a lot of pardons during Trump's outgoing. He was much more friendly to cannabis than the Biden administration has been in pardons. Biden has not let out anybody who's trafficked or anything like that. Trump had. So basically, what I'm hearing for this round is that there is not a whole lot we can expect. I would be really happy to be wrong about that. I don't need to die on my reporting hill. So, but that is what I'm hearing at this time with only a few days left. I Daniel believes from his own intel that his chances are nil, which means he would have to wait till this summer, assuming, the rest of his term is served outright and nothing else happens. But the truth is that it is a very opaque, it is a very secretive, it is a very relationship-based process, this pardon process. And there are activists and people in the clemency space who this is what they do and they work this and they need a new strategy, new relationships, and new, networking every administration turn. Like it just changes. That's out, and you got to work with a new batch of people and new politics. And so it changes every time. That's why it's different with every president. It's not just the president, but it's the mandate around him or well, I was going to say him or her, but there's never been a her. Anyway, so it is it's not as simple as, and we should all keep doing this, sending out petitions and politicking and sending, writing about it and talking about it and calling for it and posting about it. We should be doing that. Unfortunately, that kind of stuff I have realized does not totally move the needle, truthfully. And it really is the work of these activists behind closed doors, these organizations, and they are only able to do what they are able to do. And very often it's not much. So, and it depends on whim, luck, relationships, and everything kind of aligning. And that doesn't always happen. So it remains to be seen what will happen for the end of this presidential administration with pardons, but it isn't looking amazing and it has not been going great so far. Clearly not that many people and nobody on trafficking charges has gotten out.
Well, thank you for sharing all of that with us. It is definitely frustrating. I think a lot of people in the industry were hopeful that Biden was going to do something with, this opportunity. But I agree with you that hope is starting to dwindle. But yes, I do appreciate everything that you shared with us today, Jackie. You are one of the most knowledgeable people in the industry and one of the women that, has been out there for a while now. I've looked to as, somebody that you could be a professional in the cannabis industry. And so I really appreciate you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And, I appreciate that anybody gives a crap what I have to say, but I do try hard to stay informed. So, and I like talking to everyone. So I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Well, we love hearing from you, and that will do it for this special one-on-one interview for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. That show gets released on Mondays at 9 a.m. Eastern on our app, PCM TV, our website, procannabismedia.com, and our YouTube channel. For now, I'm Dina Nagib. Thanks for watching.
I think I messed up. Did you know there's a place that covers all the cannabis news you need? Welcome to Pro Cannabis Media, your go-to for all things cannabis. PCM is the CNBC of weed, bringing you the latest news and talk shows with a twist. We've got 16 state correspondents and multimedia journalists from around the US and Canada.
Hey everybody, it's Brandon Jones with Be Green Distribution with the Missouri Cannabis Report.
I'm Karen Black from Greenfinger Consulting with the Arizona Cannabis Report.
I'm Amy Carter from Michigan Weedsters.
Andrew Behringer here reporting from Washington, D.C.
Debbie Fazy with the Canadian Toke of the Week.
It all started back in 2018 when founder Jimmy Young kicked off the In the Weeds podcast. His mission? Documenting the fight to end cannabis prohibition. Fast forward to today and we've got Cannabis Coast to Coast with Elena Pinto, delivering the nation's only TV-style cannabis news show.
Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of Cannabis Coast to Coast, PCM TV's weekly roundup of industry news from California to New York. I'm Elena Pinto.
As of August 2024, PCM has racked up over 1.2 million views and 14.5 million impressions on our YouTube channel. With 15,000 subscribers and growing, our reach is spreading like wildfire. PCM's website, YouTube, Rumble, Discord, Roku, Twitch, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, and even our very own PCM TV app. Get your cannabis news fix with Pro Cannabis Media. We're here to keep you informed and entertained. Stay tuned and stay lifted.